Well, if you imagine if you read the contract and you say my earnest money is non-refundable immediately,
Yeah.
which you can do, and then you get the CIC package and cancel,
Still get it back.
you do.
This is Las Vegas Real Estate Now with local real estate expert Harvey Blankfeld.
I want to talk to you today about contingencies because in this market where you have multiple offers, sellers dealing with offers over list and prices getting pushed and things of that nature, you got lots of buyers competing. And in the course of competing, they decide to give up certain contingencies. But it's dangerous, isn't it?
Very dangerous. We should educate ourselves as much as possible every time we buy with an outside inspector, even if we get a repair list. Now, even I tell people all the time, if the seller's like as is, no way am I going to, because it's my market, I'm in charge, maybe.
Yeah.
Or just turn in the addendum anyway and then see if the seller fixes it. But if you find a major problem, such as mold, the seller's going to have to deal with that with the next buyer anyway.
Right.
And there's many times they will repair things. Or let's imagine we find a problem that we don't want to deal with. Like someone comes in, says there's mold, and the buyer has experienced that in another property, and they walk.
Yeah.
And get their earnest money back. And so they didn't do the inspection hoping the seller was going to compensate problems or to address them. But we need to look at it like we're educating ourselves.
And if I'm sitting there discussing multiple offers with my seller, I don't know how you do this, Danielle, but I would tell them, I actually like the offer with the inspections better than the ones without.
I agree.
Don't you?
I agree.
Yeah. Now, appraisal's another story altogether, but waiving appraisal presents different issues.
It really does, because basically you really have to pay attention to your deadlines as a buyer, because you're always going to have certain time frames where you can cancel without penalty. And one thing really unique in Nevada is that if you're in a common interest community, you have this really powerful cloud over the whole transaction until that quote unquote, it's called the resale package.
Right.
But if you don't have a CIC, that's a different story. But I've seen a lot of crazy arguments lately where buyers waive as much as they can. They waive contingency on appraisal, they waive an inspection. Everybody thinks the deal's moving forward. But the buyer always has that 5 days to cancel with the CIC package. The CIC law actually has the words without penalty.
Right.
And that's super unique. They'll send 4 or 5 offers out at once.
Yes.
Accept them all. So they're in contract with 5 people.
Okay.
But you don't know that.
Yeah.
And as long as they're in a CIC package, home
Isn't that
owner,
awful?
yeah, and then they cancel within the 5 days.
So wait, they're going under contract with all of them? Like
Yeah.
opening escrow with all 5?
Yeah.
With the idea that they can use the CIC
Yeah.
package to
So it's a big
cancel the
question of
transaction.
whether or not that's something that a realtor should be involved in. And
There's an ethical issue there for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
well, if you imagine if you read the contract and you say my earnest money is non-refundable immediately,
Yeah.
which you can do, and then you get the CIC package and cancel,
Still get it back.
you do,
Wow.
because it says without penalty.
Without penalty.
So it
Interesting.
even states, if you keep reading, it says, comma, all monies paid by seller to da-da-da-da, or shall be returned.
Return to the buyer. But I want to talk about the seller contingencies in our contract, of which there are none. I mean, in our contract, once a seller signs it,
What contingencies are those?
yeah, that's the point.
Yeah, they're not built in. Historically, you saw it in Las Vegas in commercial
Okay.
quite often, because all commercial properties, for the most part, are not owner-occupied. So if you are dealing with taxes, if you're owner-occupied in residential, it's a very simple tax code. And
Right.
that is you have to live there X number of years in the last 5. You really don't pay taxes on what you gain on a residential occupied property.
Right.
Well, in commercial, there is no such law. And so what you've seen over the years, many, many, many years, is there is a seller's contingency in commercial, and that is I want to do what's known as a 1031 exchange, which is where you have to sell the property, quickly buy another one, and you technically don't ever touch the money. Then you don't pay taxes on the gain.
Right.
So that contingency is often written into a commercial contract.
Okay.
And I'm the seller, and I say, I don't have to close escrow unless I find a replacement property. I'll tell you what, in jurisdictions around us, California and Arizona, they have that contingency in the residential culture. So the seller can say, I don't have to close escrow unless I find a replacement property. And it's the same as the culture here for commercial, in that it doesn't last forever. The
Right.
seller has X number of days. California brought us the disappearing rights. That's
Oh,
how
right.
they did it years ago. So they've always had in their contracts, say the average close is 30 to 60 days. Everything more or less expires in about 21 to 28 days.
Right.
And that, remember, in our old culture, the buyer had the right to cancel all the way up to the close of escrow.
Yep.
The way we viewed loan contingencies.
Right.
And then we transferred and shifted it around, and the culture here moved to the buyer has a very strong ability to cancel without penalty for a while.
But
And then
now
everything expires.
right, and I love that, honestly.
Right.
I think that's made our
Yeah,
that's
I
made
like
our
that
situation
better.
a lot better for sellers.
Sure.
Sellers needed that protection because we had buyers canceling the day of closing.
Well, and
Correct.
they were
Based
dragging
on
it
financing.
on and on and on. So
Yeah.
at least it puts
And they
stops
can
the
still
bleeding
look.
quicker than.
A buyer can still cancel, but they're going to lose their earnest money at that point. And the seller has been financially damaged at that point. You've been listening to Las Vegas Real Estate Now. If you ever have a question about real estate or any of the other topics we cover, just call me off air or text me at 702-203-1165. You can also check us out on the web at lvrealestateradio.com or on our handle on social media at LV Real Estate Radio. We'll meet you on the radio next Saturday at 11 a.m. right here on the new 101.5 FM, 720 a.m. KDWN, the Talk of Las Vegas.